Mr. Speaker, I rise today to address Bill C-15, the first Budget Implementation Act. The budget introduced after Canadians were made to wait well over a year to understand the fiscal reality this Liberal government put them in after 10 years. Canadians are facing a harsh and worsening reality. When they open their wallets, they see less money and fewer opportunities. They are met with promises from a government that insists that a few more $1 billion in Ottawa's spending will magically resolve their struggles. And yet this government believes the same ideas are going to fix their messes, spend more, borrow more, add bureaucracy, every time it makes the situation worse. I stand here representing the great people of Red Deer, Alberta, to tell the government that my constituents have had enough. They've had enough of the 10 long Liberal years that continue to add inflationary spending to the already ballooned national debt left by Justin Trudeau. Speaking of Justin Trudeau, as Prime Minister, he spent more Canadian hard-earned dollars than any other Prime Minister in the history of Canada, combined. Today, this Prime Minister is well on his way to eclipse that unfortunate milestone set by his predecessor. Budget 2025 is not a blueprint for prosperity. It is a blueprint for more government intervention, more centralized planning, and more top-down bureaucracy. Just 6 months ago, the Prime Minister claimed he would restore discipline and financial credibility. Instead, the budget revealed a sharp departure from those commitments. What do Canadians have to show for it? Federal debt standing at nearly $1.3 trillion, $141 billion in new spending, a $78.3 billion deficit in 25-26 alone, ballooning from $62 billion, an affordability crisis where housing costs have doubled, food, fuel, necessities are out of reach for so many, GDP stagnation to only 1% between 2014 to 2024. A lower standard of living. According to the Parliamentary Budget Officer, the federal debt to GDP ratio in Budget 2025 is projected to be higher compared to the 2024 FES and is no longer projected to be on a declining path over the medium term. So the federal government's own so-called debt to GDP fiscal anchor abandoned. The government promised to help municipalities cut home building taxes in half. This budget breaks that promise and locks in higher housing costs. Meanwhile, Canada is mired in the productivity crisis of its own. Just days ago, the Deputy Governor of the Bank of Canada stated, "We are stuck in a vicious cycle of weak productivity." He said, quote, "A certain level of regulation is essential, of course, but it's fair to ask if we could regulate better. This could mean speeding up approval processes, reevaluating the scope of some rules, and reducing the overall uncertainty around regulation. We also need to address overlap, redundancies, and contradictions between the different levels of government." End of quote. This is not some partisan conservative attack. This is a government official in an institution tasked with setting the monetary policy of his government, of this government. Something the Prime Minister should know well enough about. Canadians expect economic stability, yet Stats Can shows the economy weakening rapidly. GDP grew by only 1.1% in the past year, the second lowest in the G7. Canada has lost more than 27,000 manufacturing jobs in the past year. Business insolvencies are up 35% year over year, the highest increase since the 80s. Wages are falling in real terms, young workers experiencing the sharpest declines. Core inflation remains above 3%, and food inflation continues to rise month after month. When parents in Red Deer wake up every morning, too often they're forced to wonder whether their paychecks will be enough to cover their rent, or whether they'll be able to put healthy, nutritious food on the table for their families. In March 2025 alone, there were 2.2 million visits to food banks across Canada, the highest number ever recorded. In Alberta...
The Honourable Member for Red Deer, but it appears that the interpretation is not working properly. Can Can we test it in French? Est-ce qu'on peut essayer? Is it working? It's working now? Thank you. The Honourable Member for Red Deer may proceed.
In Alberta, 36% of food bank visits were for children. Even more troubling, employment income accounts for the largest share of income sources among food bank visitors, 31% of all visits. That means fewer Albertans have the means to even donate to food banks to help their neighbours in need. Let's talk housing, Madam Speaker. The government stole the dream of home ownership from an entire generation of young Canadians. Canadians were told that homes would be built at a scale and speed not seen in generations. What did this budget do? Another bureaucratic organization and less action. The agency promised to immediately cut development charges in half. That has gone unfilled. The CMHC confirmed in October housing starts are down 17%. Young Canadians want to start families. They want to be able to live the lives they were promised after they got educated, work hard, and now find it impossible to get ahead. This is the first generation in decades that has lower standards of living than their parents and their grandparents. But this government believes bringing in more immigration will fix the problem, while Canadians are stuck without support to start and grow their own families. Mass immigration into this country has played a major part in the affordability crisis, robbing Canadians of prosperity in their own country. It's a simple question. More people taking up more infrastructure, healthcare capacity, housing, government subsidies means less availability for Canadians already here. It's not the fault of people coming to Canada under a false promise of a better life from a government without a plan for them. For decades, immigration with proper integration has shaped our communities and helped forge who we are as a nation. But indeed, it is this government's own doing of rapid expanding our migration numbers without ensuring our institutions can handle it that has both collapsed Canadian confidence in our immigration system and led to the fracturing of communities across our country. For example, over the past number of weeks, we have heard over and over again at the Health Committee that not one healthcare body was consulted on immigration levels to ensure our healthcare system could handle it. If the people working to keep Canadians healthy don't even have a say on how many people they can treat, how can they be expected to care for millions more on top of their burden? Well, they were, and the government said too bad. Over 6.5 million Canadians are without a family doctor. The nursing shortage is expected to exceed 100,000 by 2030. Meanwhile, there are 80,000 foreign-trained healthcare professionals that came to this country to work in our healthcare system, and they are not able to do so. Again, government red tape and bureaucracy has made it impossible. But instead of integrating these healthcare professionals that are already here in Canada, the government wants to repeat the same mistake and bring in more. This is not sustainable. Madam Speaker, all of this adds up. Somebody eventually has to pay the bill. It's simply unfair to pass on responsibility of today's reckless spending to our future generations, while this government repeats the same mistakes of the past decade that led us to this problem. This government should be looking to unleash the power of Canadian ingenuity and industry, set the standards for growth, and get out of the way. Incentivize the free market, not be the main driver of a centralized economy, or worse, make the conditions of a free market impossible to grow, so that the government is the only answer. Canada has limitless potential if only the government would not see itself as the main character, but as a supporting act to the Canadians that power it. Approve energy development, restore investor confidence, reform project approvals, expand our industries, and get out of the way. The people of Red Deer won't accept the irresponsibility of this budget. They demand better, they deserve better, they want action and real progress, not just the illusion of something happening with more talk and announcements. I will always stand here to be their voice against a government that has silenced them. Conservatives will always fight for Canadian families and Canadian workers. I urge the government to start doing the same. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Questions and comments. Questions et commentaires. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think it's important when we look at the beginning of the debates today to look at the contrast between the Conservatives and, in fact, the government of the day. You know, we have a government headed by a Prime Minister that is committed at dealing with issues coming out of the last federal election. Issues such as building a One Canada, working with premiers, breaking down barriers, increasing trade amongst the provinces. We have a Prime Minister and a government that's committed to looking abroad, Indonesia, the Philippines, Korea, India, England. We've got substantive legislation looking at ways in which we can expand our economy, create the jobs through the budget, invest in Canadians, invest in Canada. Compare that to the Conservative Party that all they talk about is cut, 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 and the issue of deficit. And by the way, our deficit is no worse than what it was when Stephen Harper was the Prime Minister back in 2009, when you have the value of the dollar. I'm wondering if he can provide his theory as to why it is he believes cuts is the best interest for Canadians today.
The Honourable Member for Red Deer.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thanks to the member from Winnipeg for the question. The government loves to distract from the problems of their own doing, but the reality is the government got Canada into this economic situation. Conservatives have a plan to fix it, like cutting the industrial carbon tax, reversing liberal inflationary deficits, fixing the broken immigration system, restoring order and peace to our streets. They should get out of the way and let us do it. Thank you.
Questions et commentaires. L'honorable député de Lac.
The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for his speech. We share many of the Conservatives' concerns about this budget and its implementation. One of the things my colleague talked about was waste. There is a very clear example of wasting money in this budget, and that is that in total, $100 billion are being left on the table because that money is being just given to the oil and gas industry. That's the total. That's what this government is choosing to do to help an industry that year over year is breaking profit records. Isn't that the clearest example of shameless wasting of public funds?
The Honourable Member for Red Deer.
Madam Speaker, I thank the member for his question. For 10 years, members of the Liberal government stood up in this House and defended Justin Trudeau's policies tooth and nail. Now suddenly they want Canadians to memory hole all the destructive decisions over the past decade that has made Canadian standards of living decrease, wage stagnate, and put housing out of reach, and make every system in this country from healthcare to immigration crumble. At least they finally admit that they did harm to this country. Now their actions need to follow.
Questions and comments, the Honourable Member for Courtenay Alberta.
Madam Speaker, I appreciate my colleague talking about that the healthcare system's overburdened and there's too much bureaucracy. The College of Family Physicians of Canada have cited that approximately 250,000 disability tax credit forms were processed in 2022, and they estimate that that amounts to about 250,000 hours of physician time lost and 1 million patient visits as well to just do a disability tax credit form. The budget amounts $10 million to help people up to $150 to do the form. Wouldn't it just make sense if the government just recognized if somebody was eligible for a disability in their province and territory that they'd automatically qualify for the disability tax credit, save taxpayers $10 million, save 1 million visits for patients that doctors could actually be helping serve the Canadian public, and take the burden off our healthcare system. Through you, Madam Speaker, does my colleague agree that this is the kind of innovation we need right now, and stop wasting doctors' time and taxpayers' money?
Honourable Member for Red Deer.
Madam Speaker, I thank the member for the question. Our healthcare system is so broken in Canada and needs so much reform. Sitting on the Standing Health Committee, I am every day hearing about the waste. I am talking about the $900 million that was spent on health care for our over-immigration problem right now currently. I'm talking about in this current budget, $5 billion that's going to be spent on hospitals, which won't even build one hospital. And I'm talking about the $97 million that they're going to spend that won't even get one extra specialist. So I thank the member for the question, and I feel that the whole system needs to be revamped, and that we as the federal government need to take the lead and look at the Canadian Health Act and change and monitor the way that we're giving money out to the provinces. Thank you.